Good morning. I'm Joanne Jobin with VID Media, and we're here this morning with CEO Jose Vizquera, who will provide our audience with an update on OIII Mining. OIII Mining, an Osisko Group company, is a gold explorer and mine developer. The company benefits from the support and mine building success, as well as the expertise of the Osisko team as it grows towards being a gold producer with several multi-million ounce deposits in Quebec. The company is well capitalized with a 100% interest in all of its properties, and it's focused on delivering superior returns for all stakeholders. Before we get started, I do want to remind you that if you have questions for the company, you may email them directly to info@o3mining.com. And please ensure that you fill out the questionnaire at the end of the presentation. This helps OIII communicate more effectively with you for future events. And now I'd like to turn it over to Jose, who will provide an update on the company. Jose?
Thank you very much for having us, and good morning, everyone. Good afternoon for whoever is somewhere abroad. This is a presentation on OIII Mining, and we will be covering the developments that we had since the last. It is certainly a pleasure for us to be here. Once again, OIII Mining stands for the third iteration of Osisko Mining. And one thing that we should be very attentive for saying something is that this is not the first time that this group, the Osisko Group, is putting this forward. This happened before. The Osisko Group was one of the few groups that were able to find a deposit, which at the time was the Malartic mine, build the mine, put the mine into production, and sell the company, which happened in 2014 to Yamana and Agnico Eagle. And it almost seems today that this is a deja vu. We are living the same story again in 2022. Let me introduce you to this story. We started this story in 2018 when we decided to do a spin-out, and we believed into four pillars. The assets, Marban, only 12 kilometers from the Canadian Malartic mine, that mine that I just spoke before that was built by the Osisko Group and sold to Yamana and Agnico, and currently being taken over by only Agnico Eagle. Agnico Eagle is buying together with Pan American Silver the Yamana's assets, and Agnico will keep the assets in Canada, meaning importantly enough, the Canadian Malartic mine. We have been able to build our own financial strength by selling some of the assets that we had to different companies. And as part of that, we have the investments for over $45 million. We have around $48 million in equities that could be sold at any time to continue to advance our projects without having to tap into the market. And we have still $23.5 million in hard dollars and flow-through money that we will be using towards bringing our projects to a feasibility study. We have the right people. Together with us is Jean-Félix Lepage, who comes from Newmont. We have Louis Gariepi, who is an extraordinary geologist that worked for Anglo American and was part of the discovery of one of the most important volcanic massive sulfides in Peru, called Cerro Lindo, which now is owned by Nexa. We have Mirza Bello, who has been working for SNC Lavalin in Brazil for a number of years and knows the industry very well. And Alex Rodriguez coming from Glencore, as well as Elia Techinki, who is our CFO, and he's coming from Teachers Pension Plans. So we have an extraordinary group of professionals working towards a common goal, which is to put Marban into production in the next couple of years, beginning production by 2026. We believe in ESG to our heart, in the sense that we are one of the few companies that are actually doing something with ESG, and we have been certified by Ecologo. One of the things that differentiate us is that management actually has a portion of the company. We own around 7% between myself and our family office and some of our board members. And we have significant shareholders that are part of large funds that are long-term shareholders, and that we will be adding value to them and to every single shareholder that is part of O3 Mining. And that is something that is a commitment that we have with all our shareholders. As part of that, we have 7 different analysts that are covering us, and from where you could efficiently look into what we have been doing and how do they value us. Very important to mention is where we are, and we are in Val d'Or, the Valley of Gold in translation from the French. And we are in an area where more than 40 million ounces has already been produced. It is an area that has an extraordinary infrastructure. We have energy, very, very cheap energy because it's hydroelectric power. We have railroads, roads, airports. We have manpower, which is extremely important, water, and aggregates. So we are in an exceptional area, and because of that is where we see essentially low cost as well, which is extremely important to deal with a project that we could actually be in the first quartile of the production cost. It is also important to see from here that we are only a couple of kilometers from the Canadian Malartic mine. It's really only across the highway where we are. And we could even use the railroad to take the ore into Canadian Malartic, which will be an extraordinary benefit for us, because if we manage to do that, we will reduce our capex in 2/3. Yes, you heard well, in 2/3. We'll be bringing down our capex from $435 million to practically $160 million. What is Marban and where we are in Marban, and what is the importance of Marban? Well, the importance of Marban, first of all, is that we have already over 1.8 million ounces in measured and indicated resources. We have already a pre-feasibility study, which is only made and only done with the resources that are measured and indicated. Those resources that are inferred are not used here. We have the highest quality of the resources. We have resources that has been done drilling at 65 meters apart and 35 meters apart, which is essentially indicated and measured. We're not taking into account the inferred resources. So we feel very confident and comfortable with the resource that we have at this moment. And we have 5 different pits from where we're going to be taking the production. Talking about what I mentioned before in terms of the capex, the initial capex, which takes into account the tailings, the plant, infrastructure, etc., that is $435 million. If we find an agreement with Agnico Eagle, which is now only Agnico Eagle since Yamana will be taken over, then we can reduce that to $160 million. A different question will be if Agnico actually wants to do that, or if they decide that they want to take over the company. That's a different story, and that's up to them. We don't control that. What we can control is what we could do. And in the things that we could do, we will take this to a feasibility study, and from that point on, put it into production by 2026, which again could be a deja vu to what happened to Osisko Mining in the years between 2003 and 2014. As I mentioned before, we will be producing 1.8 million ounces from resources, which translate into 1.5 million ounces of gold. And from here, it's very important to mention that for every 160,000 ounces more that we produce, we will be adding around $70 to $80 million into a net present value, which makes us believe that we could have a project that will be, in the long term, talking about 15 years, probably a net present value of around $750 million more than what we have right now, which is $463 million, because that's only representing 9 years. If we take 15 years, then we're talking about $700 million, which put us into a profitability ratio of over 2. If we manage to send this to Canadian Malartic, a profitability ratio of over 4, which is fantastic. So this is a very unique project, a project that is robust, a project that is doable, a project that can be done by ourselves, on top of having the upside of being able to do this with the our neighbors and expanding the synergies with Canadian Malartic and Agnico Eagle, which will be a great outcome for that. Where we will see the benefit, as I mentioned before, and you can see it here in red, is first of all in the pre-feasibility, moving to a feasibility and going to production on how many more years we could have of production, as well as on our secondary asset called Alpha, where we just put out a new resource for 320,000 ounces. So we keep adding fundamental value, which is what really differentiates us from our competitors. This just shows where we are located in the general layout. As I mentioned before, we do have a competitive cost because of the infrastructure in Val-d'Or, and that will be a very important difference between us and our competitors once we put this into production. It is extremely important to show here where the capex could be going lower, and that will be if we have to reduce what we have in here, which is essentially the infrastructure and the tailings. So by doing that, we'll bring that cost to $160 million, which will be an extraordinary advantage for us. Now, how are we going to have not 10 years, but 15 years? And that is by finding new ore, new mineralization. Where we're finding that is essentially at Malartic H and Malartic High Grade. We also have the potential here of expanding the mineralization towards the eastern side of Marban, which is another opportunity that we have. So what we see right now in Marban, candidly, is not only a deposit that right now is 1.8 million ounces, but really the possibility of having a deposit that eventually will be more in the order of 5 million ounces. We see now that we're moving from 2.5 to 3.5, but we see that by continuing to drill in a very systematic way, we could see 5 million ounces. And of course, I mean, there is potential for more if you just continue to go underground. But now that is a matter of capital allocation. Do we really want to put money right now to go very deep? Or are we going to concentrate on the upper parts? And we have decided to focus on the upper parts. So what we have been able to do since 2018 that we decided to go IPO till today, 2022. We said we were going to do a resource study, and we did it on time and on budget. We said we were going to do a preliminary economic assessment, and we did it on time and on budget. We said we were going to do a pre-feasibility study, and we have done it on time and on budget. Now we're moving towards the feasibility study, and we will aim to have this mine into production by 2026. Now, what are the next steps, which are very important? And that will go on the value added, on the fundamental value added into the project. One is permitting. We will file our project description. And we probably will be doing that in the next couple of days. We are working on the optimization of the trade-off analysis. We're working certainly on the financing options. We don't want to depend on the option if we are able to, exploit synergies with Agnico Eagle or not, but we want to depend on ourselves. So we're working on different financial possibilities where we could be working by ourselves, not depending on anyone else. And that is a very important point. We are a robust project independently if we can use the synergies with major companies such as Agnico Eagle or not.
Thank you, Jose. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. Again, if you have further questions for the company, you may email them at info@o3mining.com. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and see you on the next VID Town Hall Forum.